Once upon a time, in a small, bustling town, there lived a 17-year-old boy named Kellen Travers. He was the kind of kid who often went unnoticed in the crowded hallways of East High School. Quiet and polite, Kellen was the type of teenager adults adored. He never caused trouble and always kept to himself. But behind his calm demeanor lay a keen observer, one who noticed the subtle injustices that others ignored. Kellen lived with his mother, Renee, who worked 2 jobs to provide for them. She was a strong woman, her faith unwavering, and she often reminded Kellen to be cautious. "Be smart, baby," she would say, clutching her rosary tightly, "and don't trust everything that smiles at you." Her words echoed in Kellen's mind as he navigated the challenges of adolescence. One fateful Thursday morning, Kellen's life took an unexpected turn. 2 impeccably dressed men in a gray Corolla with government plates arrived at his house to pick him up for a summer mentorship program at Holbrook Dynamics, one of the most influential logistics firms in the Midwest. Kellen was thrilled, feeling like he had been handpicked for something extraordinary. Out of more than 300 applicants, only 8 were selected, and he was the only black student from East London. The headquarters of Holbrook Dynamics was a marvel of modern architecture, glass and steel, with a grand triple lobby and an indoor garden. As Kellen entered, he felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He was met by Richard Holbrook, the founder, whose silver hair and sharp jawline exuded authority. "Ah, Mr. Travers," Holbrook greeted him with a smile. "I've heard good things about you." Kellen returned the smile, but felt an unsettling sense of pressure to impress. The first week of the internship was all about observation. Kellen sat in rooms filled with confident executives discussing Q4 traction and vendor leverage, sipping water from square bottles. While the others mingled and laughed, Kellen absorbed everything, his eyes darting around the room, noting names, roles, and reactions. He quickly realized that the talk of diversity was often just a facade. It was more about appearance than genuine influence. He noticed the black security guard at the entrance who was never allowed to sit, and the janitor, an older woman who reminded him of his aunt, who always kept her eyes on the floor. Every evening, Kellen filled a small marble notebook with observations. One day, while the other interns chatted over lunch, Kellen found himself alone in a side office. On the desk lay a manila folder marked YPP Partner Contracts. Unable to resist his curiosity, he opened it. The contracts seemed polished and professional, but on page 5, buried in the legal jargon, was a clause that made his heart race. It stated that if they signed the contract, they would be bound to Holbrook Dynamics for 2 years, unable to intern elsewhere in logistics. Kellen's mind raced. This didn't sound like an opportunity. It felt like a trap. He closed the folder and returned to his desk, making a note in his book, Clause 5.4, Box Trap. That night at dinner, when his mother asked about his day, he hesitated. "It's different," he finally said. "They talk a lot, but it feels like they're not really talking to us." Renee nodded knowingly, her brow furrowed. "Remember what I told you," she said, looking him in the eye. "If someone tries to trick you into something, you have to stand up and say something, even if it's risky." Kellen took her words to heart, feeling the weight of responsibility on his young shoulders. The next morning, Kellen walked into the building with newfound determination. He was not just another intern. He was there to uncover the truth. During a prep session for the upcoming Youth Partnership Roundtable, Kellen noticed that the other interns were too busy being excited to read the fine print. He leaned over to Ariel Dansby, a sharp and quiet girl sitting next to him. "Have you read this yet?" he asked, tapping the contract. She shook her head. "It's standard," she replied, but Kellen could see her uncertainty. He nudged the paper toward her, and as she scanned it, her expression changed. "Wait, we can't intern anywhere else for 2 years? Not even part-time gigs?" she asked, her voice low. Kellen nodded, feeling a sense of urgency. Later that afternoon, during a reflection hour, Kellen found a quiet spot and watched as 2 junior lawyers whispered to each other, their expressions serious. "No one's going to notice," one said. Kellen's heart sank. They were underestimating him and his fellow interns. That night, Kellen stayed up late, his mind racing. He compared the contract he had seen with the one the interns were given. It was the same, but the implications were more sinister than he had imagined. Not only did it bind them to Holbrook, but it also included non-disparagement clauses that could blacklist anyone who spoke negatively about the program. This isn't a mistake, Kellen thought, feeling the weight of the truth. He thought of his mother's warning, of the way she held his face and urged him to be careful. "I can't let this happen," he whispered to himself. On Friday morning, as Kellen entered the conference room, he felt the tension in the air. He arrived early, sitting quietly as the other interns chatted excitedly. Holbrook stood at the head of the table, radiating confidence. "Welcome, everyone. Today is a celebration of your potential," he announced, his smile wide. Kellen's heart raced as he raised his hand, his voice steady. "Excuse me, but this clause is a trap," he said, his tone calm yet firm. The room fell silent, and Holbrook's smile faltered. Kellen continued, pointing to Clause 5.4. "It blocks us from working with any logistics company for 2 years. This isn't an opportunity, it's a limitation." The tension was palpable. Holbrook's demeanor shifted, and he cleared his throat. "That's a strong interpretation, Kellen," he said, but Kellen didn't back down. "It's a fact. We're high school kids, and you're locking us out of our futures." Ariel whispered, "He's right," and soon others joined in, expressing their concerns. Kellen felt a surge of hope. Perhaps they could change things together. But Holbrook, sensing the growing dissent, dismissed the meeting abruptly, leaving Kellen shaken but determined. Over the next few days, Kellen became a target. His access to company systems was revoked, and he was assigned meaningless tasks. But he refused to be silenced. He reached out to Candace Mercer, an investigative journalist, sharing his findings. The article that followed shook the foundations of Holbrook dynamics. As the story gained traction, Kellen faced threats and attempts to discredit him, but he stood firm. He organized a town hall where other interns shared their stories, amplifying their collective voice. The support was overwhelming, and Kellen found strength in numbers. One evening, Kellen stood at a podium during a community event, addressing a crowd filled with teachers, students, and mentors. "Silence isn't safety, it's permission," he declared, urging everyone to speak out against injustices. The applause that followed was thunderous, a wave of support that washed over him. Months passed, and Kellen became a prominent figure in the fight for transparency in mentorship programs. He helped draft new models that ensured protection for future interns, ensuring that no one would fall prey to the same traps. On a warm spring evening, Kellen stood at a foundation fundraiser, sharing his journey. "The system counts on us being too tired, too distracted, or too scared to speak," he said, his voice steady. "But if we do, we can change the narrative." As he finished speaking, Kellen felt a profound sense of purpose. He had transformed from the quiet boy in the corner into a voice for change. And as he looked out at the audience, he knew that one voice could indeed spark a revolution. The journey had only begun, but Kellen was ready to lead the way.